Hello and welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream. The man is back in the building, folks. Everybody, all hands on deck. Everyone in the room. Seahawks Brendon Nelson is back into the Hawks Nest here. We are going to have our worlds collide and see what we can come up of it. How are you doing, Brendon?
I'm doing good today. Brandon, thank you for having me on.
Off-season stress level 1 to 10. Where are we at right now?
Nothing's happening right now, so maybe it's just like a 2. Maybe you say like you can't be a 1. You can never be a 1
Can't be a 1.
because you can't be that dead on things. But as far as off seasons go, this is probably the quietest part of the off season after the Super Bowl and before free agency opens.
It's
Especially when, yeah, and right now we have our coaching staff completely sorted out. It's not like we're still maybe going to hire Adam Gase or something like that. So I don't have too much to worry about.
That's true. That's true. When you got an opening coaching vacancy or you have a little bit of an unknown quantity there, it's nice to at least carry everything. We know who's all going to be here. We know who's going to do what, and we know what's going to be what. We've got some things we're going to go through today. We got a variety of topics we're going to bounce into today, Brendon. And some of this is in reaction to Clint Hurtt's recent press conference, where he spoke about Seattle's willingness to go more to 3-4, that they're going to be hybridized, and you'll get some 4-3 and some 3-4 looks. And so what me and Brendon wanted to do today is first up out the gate, talk a little bit about the 3-4 defense a little bit more in fuller fashion, because as we've talked, we get a lot of feedback from our own channel here of people that really feel like those two fronts are ubiquitous, that one is the same as the other. It's just one guy standing up versus putting his hand on the ground. So we're going to try to get a little much into that as to where that difference lies. From there, look at a couple of the 3-4 basic free agent possibilities out there that could exist as far as if Seattle's targeting from that standpoint. Because Brendon, if you're going to go to the defense, you got to add the players to fit into it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is something that I think needs some attention because about a month ago, we did those 2 free agency streams, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we were kind of addressing things from a 4-3 perspective because we've been running the 4-3 forever. Well, it sounds like as of right now that we're going to move towards a hybrid defense. It sounds like that's the goal for 2022. Some people have pointed out that by the end of 2021, we were already kind of sort of doing some 3-4-ish stuff, which there is some truth to that.
Yeah.
But if we're really going to go to what they keep calling like a hybrid defense, that's basically what it is, right? You have some 3-4 and some 4-3. The thing is, if you're going to run a hybrid defense, you really need 3-4 personnel because you need guys who have the versatility to do a bunch of different things. You can't have these defensive ends who can only play on the line, can only play with their hand in the dirt, can only rush the passer. That's not going to work. You need guys who can do that some, but most of the time are actually going to be standing up and they're going to be playing in coverage on a non-trivial number of snaps. Mm-hmm. So you also need a specific kind of personnel on the defensive line because the roles of the defensive linemen in a 3-4 are different than a 4-3. So there's a lot of stuff to consider here, and not all 3-4 defenses are the same. There's some information here we might not know, but you definitely need, for instance, I think you need a true nose tackle. Mm-hmm. You need 3-4 defensive ends, which we may have a couple of, but I don't know if we have enough. And you need legitimate 3-4 outside linebackers, which means they can rush the passer standing up and drop back into coverage. That's what the good 3-4 outside linebackers do. So if you're going to do this, you need to bring in at least a few players who were doing things that your current personnel cannot do.
Yes, exactly. And to your point on for instance, the down lineman, you take in Seattle's scheme currently a 4-3 under what they've done, for instance, just the Leo position. That's your defensive end. He's your lighter defensive end. We've drafted to this position. We've stacked multiple players at this position. You took a guy like Frank Clark in college. You weighed about 275, playing as a heavy defensive end in college. Took him down to 259 in the pros. 259. That's to play on the outside. That's to play quick. That's to play fast. Now, if you bounce that particular player that you scouted like that, Darrell Taylor being the current iteration, you put him now inside where he will be now as that defensive end. He'll be inside. He's got to now take on guards. He's going to take on guys that are going to probably have a little bit of, 30 more pounds on them, little smaller bodies, a little easier on getting the leverage up on them. That means that's why those guys have to tend to be in recent history. If you go to 3-4 defenses, those ends have to be a little bit bigger. They got to be more into that 275. It's Frank Clark at Michigan, not Frank Clark with the Seahawks. And it falls down the line with that with the linebackers as well as kind of the size metrics and all of that. Say nothing for even the inside linebackers where they've got to be, I think, a little bit bigger because they're going to sometimes have to have more often taken on guys. Things aren't going to be as clean up in front for them.
Right. I think you said it a couple weeks ago, and it's true. The 3-4 defensive end is like the most thankless job in the NFL. Those guys never get any credit. They don't get stats, but they have a job to do. And it's not a huge difference than being like a defensive tackle in a 4-3, but there is definitely a consideration. And at the end of the day, if you haven't seen a guy do it before, it's hard to know if they're going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Say nothing of the ego they got to put aside for that. Because if you're taking a guy who's an edge guy who's getting his numbers, getting his sacks, and now you're putting him inside to where the numbers are going to get cut in half, and he's doing nothing but dirty work all day. That's all. You also need the buy-in from the player on just a willfulness standpoint.
Right. So I think that the best way to look at this is to talk about it in like 4 stages. Because to me, there are 4 things that you need to make sure you have if you're really going to try to run this hybrid defense. Which, again, hybrid is kind of like you're running a 3-4, but your 3-4 personnel goes to a 4-3 every now and then to me. Like, yeah. I like, for instance, just to kind of spoil something a little later in this stream, there are a couple guys on this team who I don't know what they do in a hybrid defense. I don't know what their place is, and I don't know if they're going to get snaps. And that's uncomfortable. That's unfortunate, but that's what you need to do. It's better that than having a player play in a situation that he's not good in.
Yeah, I agreed. You've got to, if a guy doesn't fit, there's no way you need to force this through unless you're, again, if you're committing to do 50-50 snaps, but I think I agree with you. I think they're going to lean towards heavy one direction or the other. And that this is probably a little bit of a signal shift towards going to something else that's different from what they've already done that hasn't worked recently.
Right. And this isn't like hockey. You can't have like line changes where you sub out your 3-4 guys and bring in your 4-3 guys. Well, number one, that's a very obvious tell to the defense as to what you're doing. You don't want that. And number 2, you don't have enough money and you don't have enough roster space to pull off something like that. This isn't like college football where Oregon could legitimately do stuff like that. You can't do that here.
Yeah. No, you've got to. That's why you got to lean one way or other, because going 50-50, you end up doing nothing good. You got to. Well, we can do all of it. Well, great. You can do everything under the sun. You can be multifaceted and run every type of defense that there is, but none of them are any effective because you don't have the ballers up front to get it done because everybody's a hybrid or an in between or a tweener.
Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about here is nose tackle, and that's a very important position in a 3-4 defense. And we spend a lot of time talking about defensive tackles as like 1 tech and 3 tech, right? You have your 1 tech that is a run stuffer purely, and then a 3 tech that is more of a pass rusher. In a 3-4, they actually have called the nose tackle a 0 tech. That's the nomenclature they use for him. The nose tackle in most 3-4 defenses almost never gets stats. Their only job is to eat up blockers, take up space, and free up the people behind them. So you need a very specific kind of player. And when most football fans think 3-4 nose tackle in recent memory, there are 2 players I think they think of: Casey Hampton and Vince Woolfork.
Yeah, I'm a Woolfork guy. Yeah.
Casey Hampton and Vince Woolfork were 2 of the best 3-4 nose tackles. Both those guys were like, I think, 330. They were big. They didn't put up big stats, but they absolutely did their job and made it possible for the linebackers behind them to play so well.
330 is their bra. those guys were easily 360 if not more built.
I looked on PFR before we started this video. Both those guys are listed at 325, and I was like, yeah, right.
Yeah. No. No way. I'd put money on that one. So 325.
Yeah, I doubt that very much. So you need a big boy, probably. I'll say this. When Wade Phillips was in Dallas, their nose tackle was Jay Ratliff, and he was like I think he was like 305, 310 at most.
Yeah.
And he was actually like a pass rusher. So they were doing something different there, and it actually worked pretty well for them. Jay Ratliff made 4 Pro Bowls when Wade was there. But for the most part, you're going to want that big guy. Puna is not big enough. I know he has the reputation for being this awesome big plug in the middle, big trash can full of dirt. But I believe he's like 5'11" and 310 pounds. I don't think that's cutting it. So at nose tackle, what you could do, you could bring back Al Woods because he's 330, I believe. But if you do that, you need more. You need to do, you can't have Al Woods out there for every snap. You need to bring in at least one other legitimate nose tackle. And there are a few guys like that in free agency. So let's just start there. A few of them are old, like Brandon Williams from the Ravens. He's 33. Linval Joseph from the Chargers is also 33. Both those guys have been good, though. One guy I'll tell you who caught my attention was Danny Shelton. That's a guy who's actually listed at 360, so he might be 450. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've always kind of liked Danny Shelton, so he would probably be on the list if you're looking for a legitimate nose tackle. But one way or the other, this is something that needs to be addressed, and it probably needs to be addressed with more than one player. So even if you bring back Al Woods, you need more.
Well, and I agree with you. Those are the 3 guys I found on my list too. I put it, and those were the top 3. As I was thinking about it more and more, Shelton's not had a story career coming out of UW, and funny because Clayton was sure he was going to be the next Nada, the next Haloti. He was like, oh, he's next. I don't know, John, not quite the same player, but take away the expectations, take away where his draft point was at. He's been a fairly decent to solid guy. Where those other 2 guys have been now older, have been getting worse in recent years. Brandon Williams had a just putrid year last year from a PFF standpoint, at least.
Right.
And in the last couple of years, he's been dipping down. So I'd lean into Danny Shelton as a possibility. I think this also opens up the door a little bit, Brendan, for one of the guys we were going to talk about in the draft prospect. And this is why I brought him up to you a little bit. Because you have such a dearth of options in free agency that maybe you got to look to the draft to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But this is an interesting strategic point here because the guy is Travis Jones out of, I think, UConn. Really had a great week at the Senior Bowl. His tape really pops. Everything you talked about needing in that nose tackle, which, again, the reason you need that much size, folks, is because they're over the top of the center, and they're going to be probably either holding a gap or trying to shoot a gap. And so what you can just imagine that happens being off heads up over center naturally is that they're always gapping into a double team. They're naturally going into it. Whereas even when you've got a one tech who's taking on a lot of double teams, sometimes he'll be just aligned heads up over the right guard, or even, just shaded inside, but then he can attack into a single player. It gives him a little bit more wiggle room where that guy inside, there's nowhere to run. It's a phone booth. And so you're going to get the double team. You've got to have the girth to stand out. Travis Jones had a really good week. You could say him, and I think he was voted the best defensive lineman of the week by the fellow offensive lineman. Big guy, strong as an ox. Got a little bit of Woolfork to his game, in my opinion. What did you check him out just maybe a little bit? Did you see anything with them?
Yeah, I did check him out a little bit. He's definitely a pure nose tackle. He's definitely a big guy, definitely a space eater, definitely somebody who is built to stuff the run. So I'm intrigued by that. We know, and in this division, it's not a bad idea. You got to be able to stop the run. So we're not going to be running with an undersized nose tackle. We're not going to be running with a pass rushing nose tackle like a Jay Ratliff. We're going to want somebody who can plug the run. And yeah, I liked what I saw from the initial look, I'll say.
The interesting question on this, let me walk you through where we could end up being in a bit of a pickle with this one. You go through free agency. We talked about the dearth of options. Those dearth of options leave. You're looking at Al Woods. You go into the draft. You've, let's say, addressed maybe left tackle and center in free agency, but right tackle still remains a question. You get into that second round. You've got a tackle prospect there, the best one on the board, or Jones at that point. Based on what you're saying with this being the number one spot in this defense to build from, would not then the priority be then to go lean towards Jones at that point, even going over the top of a right tackle solution?
I think the answer then would be to say you're just going to have to let it fly with Curhan because he did play well. And look, it's Pete Carroll's nature when we were having our most success was to whoever played well got to play. And even if you were somebody who was making big bucks or were an established veteran, if you were getting outplayed by somebody else who was maybe a not very highly touted player like a UDFA, like Curhan is, then the UDFA gets to play. So he has earned some credibility as a potential starter in 2022, I think. And I think that if you can't find a nose tackle in free agency, even if you get Al Woods back, you have to do the nose tackle thing. I don't want to see a 3-4 defense with Poona Ford trying to play nose tackle half the snaps. I think that's a recipe for disaster. Granted, last year we ran with the Al Woods and Poona Ford front, and we were very successful against the run. So maybe they feel like that can translate over, but I just don't know if I'm feeling it.
And there is a little bit of helpfulness here where the 4-3 under defensive style that they're bringing now with the gap and a halving and all that stuff it's a little more, it's a little less. Sometimes you can sometimes dictate less double teams. Like the Rams did this in the second half with the Bengals. There's some similarities to our defense when we're doing with we're going to bring up the extra man in the box to pull the double team off Donald. Now we get Donald singled up a little bit more. And this goes maybe, and I'm guessing on this, Brendon, but maybe this goes a little bit to the aggressiveness that Hurtt then spoke about with that, is that then they overcome that if they can't find that guy you're talking about. They go, well, okay, we're running an extra man up on that line more often than not. It's hard for me to see Carroll going that way with his nature of things, but I wonder if that's another possibility in how they look at an outside the box solution to this if they can't find that D tackle. But I agree. I think you're going to may have to do it if you don't get it in free agency. You know?
Yeah, I like to call them the trash can full of dirt. Just a big old trash can full of dirt in the middle. Like I guess Mebane was kind of like that for us once upon a time, but now you even need more than that.
Yeah.
One other name I want to throw out there real quick, a free agent this offseason, Jonathan Hankins, 340 pounds, only 30, about to turn 30 in March.
Yeah.
That would not be bad. And there's also Daquan Jones, who I think spent last year in Carolina. He's like 325, 330. So you might be able to find somebody in that range, but it's not, like you said, it's not a very pretty picture in free agency for nose tackles.
Hankins is like a poor man's Snacks Harrison. That's kind of like what he is. I don't know how much he's got left on the bone necessarily, but I remember I don't know much about Daquan, but I mean, it would be relatively okay. None of these free agent solutions, I think we both agree with here. You're really just sort of plugging the hole until you can find something better with the free agent options that do exist out there outside of going out and making a trade for somebody. It's just a light market that you're kind of dealing with here. Even looking to the draft. I mean, there's only Travis Jones. And when you look at that, you can maybe put Jordan Davis, the big freak show from Georgia, in there if you wanted to, but that's not really his game. He's a 4-3 tech basically. So, or even a 1 tech. This is going to be, I'm glad you put it as number one. It's going to be one of the harder solutions to try for them to figure out, I think, if we're talking about finding quality and not just a body.
Right. Al Woods could probably be that body, but you would need something else. And at this point, I'll say this. I actually expect us to bring back Al Woods now, and I'm cool with that because I think he can be that zero tech for at least, 30 snaps a game. But there are a lot of people who think that guy probably took the year off in 2020 to pump his body full of steroids, which is
heard that too.
part of the reason why he may have played so well last year. So
baseball taught us this lesson, Brendon. Guys heading into their mid-30s who suddenly have the best season of their career, it makes everybody's eyebrow jerk right up here up to the top of their forehead a little bit. I don't know, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. So now that we've talked about nose tackle, let's talk about the defensive ends in the 3-4 because they're, again, like we said, they're space eaters. They're block eaters. They absorb the attention so the linebackers can do what they need to do behind them. So if you're looking for a defensive end to play in a 4-3, you're not really looking at guys like Clowney. That's not a guy you would play on the inside. You wouldn't play a guy like Jason Pierre-Paul at defensive end in a 3-4.
No. You're
looking for guys who are a little stouter. A lot of defensive ends in 3-4s are pushing up near 300 pounds, actually. So I'll say I'll say this. If we do decide to do a lot of 3-4 stuff, I think a guy like Akeem Hicks becomes a little more appetizing, even though the age is still a concern, because I think he can play defensive end in a 3-4.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into that, because a lot of people really want to bring in Akeem Hicks, and I think this makes it a little more appealing, let's look at what we have. What do we have that can play on the end in a 3-4? Starting with Kerry Hyder.
Kerry Hyder is the only guy of the 4-3 guys we have right now, of the edge guys in a 4-3. In my estimation, he is the only guy you have on the roster right now who fits as a 3-4 defensive end. He has, I don't know if necessarily he's done a ton of it in the past. And my memory is that he's done it, at least I think he did in Detroit for a little bit. But beyond that, he's got the body size to do it. He's 280. So he's got that the size in there. As well, he's shown a willingness to do that dirty work stuff we talked about. This is why a guy doesn't have sacks stacked up in his career. He's been a guy that does that dirty work in the run game, just controls his gap. He understands what he needs to be doing. So he's a guy that makes a lot of sense. To me, though, Dunlap, I love your thoughts on this. I don't know. I think they're going to keep him, but only end up keeping him because there's no real significant savings by moving on from him. And he at least then gives you a guy off the bench to go to the 4-3 when you want to at that point. You can sign me up as far as at least from understanding it from that standpoint. LJ Collier is a hell no for me. Please, God, no. No. Yes, he's got the size to do it, to be theoretically a 3-4 end. And they ran 3-man fronts at TCU where they run these weird 3-man fronts with no linebackers. But it's Brendon, have we not seen enough horror? Have you not been beaten enough? Have you not been traumatized enough? Do we need to go down,
I get it. I feel you, but it should be pointed out that if we cut Collier, we only save less than $1 million. So when you're looking at Collier, the question is, can he provide $1 million worth of value? And it's not hard to provide $1 million worth of value in the NFL. So it would not shock me if we were like, well, let's try him here. I don't know. It depends on, to me, like, for instance, Poona Ford. Can Poona Ford play end in a 3-4 and do what he needs to do? That, to me, is the big question.
I can say with Kerry, because I know Kerry's got enough sand, to use your analogy, sand in the britches there to do what he needs to do to hold up. I know Poona's got enough sand. I know Poona's got enough movement capability that they can't just be complete like the Zero Tech is, where they're just space eaters. Yes, they're a little bit of the space eater variety because they're taking on double teams too a lot. But they also have to be guys that can do a little bit from the standpoint of moving guys back. I think Akeem Hicks, to your point on this, makes the one that makes a lot of sense. Not just because of the fact that he's done in the past and he's a scheme fit, but also because Sean Desai is coming in here and trying to implement this gap and a half system. You've been 2 gapping before. You'll be gap and a halfing now going forward, which is, I was doing Chad Brown interview yesterday, Brendon, and he talked a lot about the gap and a half and how tough it is. It's a very challenging on the defensive tackles and how they got to play it, because it puts him in a little bit of an in-between ground. So, him coming in, he can maybe teach also. Akeem can come in and go, okay, this is how you got to do it, guys. You want this technique here, and then you go back over here when you see it that way. Could give him a little bit of a coach on the field, a little bit of that, while still giving you a moderately productive guy who shouldn't come into the, oh, please don't sign him for some crazy cause. Like, I'm going to.
Spotrac says 2 years, 11 million. I think that would be
that's
manageable.
A total? Or is it
2 years? 2 years, 5.5 per.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I would do that. I'll do that.
It.
The first year might be like a $3.2 million cap hit or something like that, and it's cool. It's fine.
That's a void year contract right there. That's the one you put the 3rd year on. And
you might throw a little bit of a void year money on it, because by 2024, that $1 million is going to be worth like $37 in today money.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So, ideal world, you've got Kerry Hyder and Akeem Hicks starting at defensive end in a 3-4, I think. You bring Akeem Hicks.
One more guy. Do you break the bank for Ogba?
It's more interesting now that you're supposedly running a 3-4. It's more interesting now.
Agreed. I was not in on this before, but if knowing this changes the score a little bit.
I still say probably not. I think you're going to have to, like for instance, do you think Brian Monet could play end in a 3-4? How do you feel about that?
I think Brian Monet's got way more of a chance to be able to hold up as a Zero Tech, as the nose. Yeah.
Oh, really? Because he's too small to do that, I think. He's like 3. I think he's like 310.
Another
So
guy, the listed weight on that's I'm telling you, he's 340 at least 340. If you look
yeah,
at the guy compared to guys that are like listed at weights similar to what he's listed at, it's like he's dwarfing them in width and height.
he's got hollow bones, man.
I guess so. I guess so. He's got some balloons holding behind his back or something when he's on the scales. Or I don't know why they do it, but I know that they mess with those weights and that they're not anywhere near accurate to what they should be. You know, the
Yeah.
sportscasters joke about it on almost every time. Yeah, they say he's 380. Oh, you know, so it's like, yeah, I don't know on these guys, man. All these guys I think we're let, but I mean, Ogba's again another guy that you start to look at and go, well, the last 2 years of his career have been his most impactful. It's been around for actually a little bit of time, but he would be that'd be a purified fit as far as the 3-4 end goes.
Yeah, and he puts up stats. He's had like 9
Yeah.
sacks the last 2 years, which is rare for that.
Yeah.
Very rare. So he definitely has to be a consideration at this point if you don't feel like Monet can play end and you're not sure about Puna. I'll say this, and this is kind of a smaller consideration. This is like a pure backup, but I think Robert Kimdichie might be back on the menu if you're going to a 3-4 because he can play 3-4 end a little bit.
He can. He did with the Cardinals, so he's definitely got it in his bag to understand what he needs to do, and he's got the size, definitely the size, and a little bit better movement ability than you get usually with a guy that is that big. He didn't do good for us last year when he's on the field. I mean, at least for to my eyes, maybe a play or two splash, but other than that, it was just a lot of not kind of getting it done. But again, moving to a different position, he still has that theoretical talent there.
I think we got our money's worth, though. It's not like I mean,
Oh,
we were
he
just
wasn't the
bringing him on.
problem. Yeah, he wasn't.
Yeah.
It's not like I don't think like Robert Condici was not the problem last year. Definitely not that. You know, it just to me, we gotta look for the talent along with finding the fit. And is that
Yeah.
if we're bringing in just bodies, it's great, but we've got to. And I don't know. We got Tom thinks. What do you think of this, Brendon? Tom's got. Thank you for the $5 donation, Tom. He says, "What about Sue from Tampa Bay? Would he fit a 3-4 defense?"
I don't want Sue. I feel like he's at the point in his career where he's already starting to slip. He's going to slip more. It's the same reason why I don't really want to bring back Dwayne Brown. You've seen him start to slip. You think he's just suddenly going to go back up? No,
Yeah.
not at that age. I don't want Sue. The fit, I don't know about the fit, but either way, I'm not that interested.
Probably not going to be able to talk a guy into playing out of the 4-3 defense for the first time in his career at his age. On top of to Brennan's point, he's been getting worse and worse. He's got the Michael Bennett syndrome going on near the end of Michael Bennett's career, where there were more jumping of offsides, more times where he's trying to get a jump, where there was a general school of thought around the league at that time that Michael's sort of picking his moments, picking his shots. You look at last year, he's got 5.5 sacks. Oh, well, it looked like he had a good year, but then But was he really consistent, or was he sort of just picking his moments to get his stuff and keep going?
PFF, I believe, despises Sue. They gave him a grade of like 40 last year, despite him having 6 sacks.
Yeah. I'm more would be interested in see if you're bringing him in as a 3 tech and highly rotational. So you let him pick his moments and he doesn't have to do it on the field. You go, okay, look, we get it. You can't run 50, 60 snaps a game out there. We're going to run you 25, 30. We'll throw you $4 million. How about that as our pass rushing 3 tech? That's potentially interests me, but in a 3-4 defense, I don't like. You can't sign me up for Sue on that. On top of it, I just don't think he'd want to do it. But thank you, Thomas, for the $5 donation. And Randall's got another one here. Thank you, Randall, for a $5 donation as well. Says, could Puna slide to defensive end in a 3-4 similarly to how we played Red Bryant? Is his height a hindrance? We talked a little bit about this, but expand, Brendon. Where do you stand on this? Also, I mean, like, I think I'm getting enough from you to believe that you kind of think we need to address this outside the team.
I'm hoping that Puna can do it because I don't think Puna's going anywhere. He's on the second year of a pretty big contract. He'll still be due like $5 million if we cut him. So if we're actually going to do this, we need to find some way for Puna to successfully get on the field.
Do you move Puna for a third?
If somebody would give me a 3rd-round pick for Puna at this point, then yes. But I'm dubious of that. He didn't play great last year, mostly because we were stupid and tried to play him at 3 tech. I would be surprised if anybody gave up a 3rd-round pick and were willing to inherit his. I guess the remaining amount of the contract would only be like 1 year, $5 million, which that's actually pretty good. But yeah, I would probably be willing to do that. But I get the sense that you are going to kind of have to cross your fingers that Puna can do it. You've got Hyder, you've got Hicks, and then you hope that Puna can do it. And then you've got a guy like Kimdichie maybe on the practice squad. Is that enough? I don't know. That's you're kind of wishing on a star here with Puna that he can do it. But that may be the gamble you have to make. And you know what? I said this last year, and it really didn't work out. But as Pete Carroll, you have watched Puna play in practice every day for 4 years. You have watched him play, 4,000 snaps over the last 4 years. What he is capable of doing, you should have a pretty good idea of. So
it's a great point.
If you make the decision that he can do it, then he better be able to do it, or else I'm going to start wondering what you're watching every day in practice.
Yeah, there should be way less guesswork from what we just in our eyes have seen him on the field and know what he is as a player versus their guesswork here, which if you're making that extrapolation and going, no, he can do it. If you're not, and you are sliding into more 3-4 looks at like a 75-80% rate, let's say, well, then you do have to kind of look in the direction, even in eating the money and all that, to offload and pick up assets at that point. If you don't force fit a guy in, if he isn't hit, if it's not a fit here anymore, and you're making that change, make the change. If he is great, you got to roll great. But if not, don't just try to sit there and hold on to him for the hell of it. If especially you can get some kind of value out there, understanding, in my opinion, Brendon, that the tier 2 side of this draft is, no tier 1, tier 2 is where the strength of this draft is going to lie. And it is indeed a strength of this draft. So if you can get an extra pick in there, you can get an extra third, getting into that range of guys, that's kind of a money spot to be at in this draft.
Right. And real quick here, also say that I don't think Alton Robinson can play defensive end in a 3-4 either. And Dunlap also, I think we already kind of mentioned him, but he probably won't be able to do that either. We'll get to those two guys later because there's really only one thing they could potentially do in a 3-4, and that's debatable, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. Next, number 3, I want to talk about. This one's pretty easy. Inside linebacker, because in a 3-4, you've got 4 linebackers, 2 on the outside, 2 on the inside. I don't think this is that bad. The translation from Mike or Will linebacker in a 4-3 to inside linebacker in a 3-4 is not that bad. So if Brooks becomes an inside linebacker in a 3-4 in 2022, I think he can do that. I'm not too worried about that. I don't know if you disagree or not, but I feel okay with that.
It all goes back to your initial point. This is how the 3-4 defenses work. You start at the front. The front is the nose, the zero tech, the guy that's going to be up there eating up those double teams to keep the linebackers clean so they can run sideline to sideline in space. So that's more of what's going to drive the success of those inside linebackers. If you look at recent teams in years with 3-4 defenses, the Packers jump out to me in this respect. They've treated their middle linebacker position like a redhead stepchild. And they don't, they just get whoever in there. We'll just get whoever in there. And they do okay. I mean, we'll move Clay Matthews from outside to inside. But it's you can get by on it. It's if you got the dogs kind of up front to kind of hold it down there and keep them clean, then it's going to be fine. They'll get exposed if you don't. If the guards come into the second level, they can't take on. I mean, Jordan Brooks taking on a guard a predominant amount of the time in the game that scares me a little bit. But if you got, this is where we come to that's why the importance is driven to the zero technique. And I think the team, Brendon, I think you'd agree. The inclination here from my standpoint would be the team's going to want to renegotiate with Bobby. They're not going to just go, so that's going to happen. Now you have 2 natural linebackers here anyway. So that makes the transition as well easier. As I'm sure probably Barton can do okay within the 3-4 as well. I mean, as a middle linebacker. So you got 3 guys at least deep there.
Yeah, except for the fact where your 2 starting inside linebackers both cannot cover. That's not my favorite.
That's just
but
paperwork, Brendon.
I was going to mention the fact that going to a 3-4 does kind of make it a little more palatable to keep Bobby, because now you have 2 inside linebacker spots. So maybe now you extend Bobby, or you cut him and bring him back, or whatever you end up doing. I'm sure we're not going to bring him back at $20 million. If we bring him back at $20 million, that's malpractice.
Yes.
That every Seahawks fan should be able to sue the organization if they think Bobby Wagner is worth $20 million at his age.
Yeah.
But if hypothetically, let's say you do let Bobby go, let's say you can't make it work. Let's say let's say he does the KJ Wright thing where he's like, oh, I want to come back, but no, I'm not going to take less money. And then they just go, okay, well, then you're out of here. I mean, it happened with KJ. It could happen with Bobby, I guess, right? There are some guys in free agency who have played inside linebacker in a 3-4 before, like Jayon Brown was playing inside for the Titans last year. He's good. I like him. Gerard Davis, I think, has played 3-4 inside. And A.J. Johnson from the Broncos would be a couple of guys I would initially put on the list. But this isn't too big of a deal. You could get somebody like a Reggie Ragland from the Giants, who was playing in a 3-4 last year. Give him like $3 million and say, hey, come play inside for us. Brooks is going to be the focal point inside linebacker. And then the next guy just needs to be kind of complimentary. So is there anybody that catches your eye in particular?
Well, Jalen's been a guy that's been really good for the Titans for a while. He had a really down year last year for them. And that does sort of steer me a tiny bit away from him. I tend to go back to what, this, unlike what I look at as far as the defensive line, I look at the middle linebackers within the 3-4 is they're important. They're not the least important, but they're not the highest pecking order of the needs within this front seven. And you do have to prioritize what is the highest needs to make sure you're putting the proper quality in the proper positions. Otherwise, you're putting in positions that aren't going to have the impact for how much money you're putting into it, like we kind of have right now with $20 million going to a middle linebacker. And it's what's been the results of that since we paid Bobby, a team that ranks in the 20s. And not Bobby's fault. I'm not putting the blame on him. I'm not being simplistic with this, but it's just it is what it is. You putting $20 million to a defensive line, your pass rush is going to probably, if you got a Myles Garrett type over there or a Joey Bosa type over there, you're putting that kind of investment there. You're going to get a little more maybe bang for your buck, let's just say on that.
Right.
So I'm going to be okay. What I would probably do, Brendan, is I wouldn't probably go to free agency. I would ride with my 2 linebackers, and then I would commit to getting a middle linebacker in the draft, and then wait through tier 3 of free agency, and then go pick up one of these cheap middle linebackers at that point for pennies on the dollar. I don't put significant amount. I mean, that's the key to the if we do move off from Bobby, is saving that money. Having that money, then we can put to other resources, not to reinvest it back into the kitty on that same position, sort of just doing the circle loop thing, basically.
All right. Well, that's one of the benefits of no longer having a defensive coordinator who is a former linebacker coach.
That's true. Who loved himself linebackers.
Yeah. And by the way, did you see he got the job at UCLA?
I did. With Chip Kelly, huh?
Yeah. I heard he was going to get the Niners job, which made sense to me. And he'll probably be good as a linebacker coach, if we're being perfectly honest here. But yeah.
It's like what I said. I think he's been the best linebacker. You can make a strong argument to say he's been the best linebacker coach of the last 20 years, going back to his USC days. If you look at all the prospects he churned out, if you look at all the players who under his tutelage who did really well here in Seattle, including the high end. I mean, he had 2 guys out the gate that he trained so well, he didn't need replacements. That doesn't mean he isn't still an awesome linebackers coach. It's just that, like we talk about with certain coordinators like a Fangio, who you say, he's a better coordinator than he is a coach. Norton's a better positional coach than he is an actual coordinator. And that's okay. It's not a black mark on him. He'll do, like you said, he'll do a great job in UCLA, but it is what it is. You can't change it.
Right. Okay. So that's the first 3 things, but this last one might actually be the biggest deal in terms of how much money you're going to have to spend to make it right. It's outside linebacker in a 3-4. So they're kind of like the defensive ends in a 4-3, but they are asked to do more. And that's the issue here. Carlos Dunlap, I think they tried to make him play outside linebacker in a 3-4 his last year in Cincy, and that it wasn't working out. So that tells me he probably won't be able to do it now that he's a couple years older.
Right.
I know last year we were doing things like we were trying to have Alton Robinson drop back into coverage. Didn't seem to really work that well. So that indicates to me that he probably wouldn't do so well in that stand-up outside linebacker role.
Agreed.
So here's what I'll say. One of the reasons why I really like the idea of a hybrid defense, I think it's a great way to get the most out of Darrell Taylor. Because I look at Darrell Taylor and I see a guy who I think can play defensive end, Leo, or 5-tech in a 4-3. I think he can play Sam in a 4-3, and I think he can play outside linebacker in a 3-4. Potentially. I think he has the talent, and I think he has the ability to do all 4 of those things. So a hybrid defense gives him the opportunity to maybe do a lot of those different things. And I think that might be the best way to get a lot of good stuff out of him. That's one of the reasons why I think this is actually a great idea. So,
Agreed.
yeah.
Sorry.
So you got Daryl Taylor on one outside linebacker spot. But after that, if you're crossing off Dunlap and you're crossing off Alton because you don't think those guys are going to be able to do it, which, I mean, I think we already have pretty good evidence that they would be passable at best in that role, then you're down to Benson Mayowa, who I think he could do it, but he's not a good player. He's just a body. And then you're down to what? Is there anybody else on this roster you feel like could even pretend to play 3-4 outside linebacker? Not LJ Collier, not Robert Kimdichie, not. Yeah. So if you're going to make this happen, you got to bring in one more stud and you've got to bring in some depth. And really good outside linebackers in the 3-4, they go for money. Like, look at what TJ Watt just got. Look at what Von Miller got once upon a time. Look at what Chandler Jones was getting paid once upon a time. This is expensive. This is hard. So this is probably the biggest task in front of us. Finding another really good outside linebacker. There's one guy in free agency who I really like, but I'll let you go first here. What do you think?
No, I agree with everything you said on that. I mean, Daryl Taylor should be your the building block, the main building block on this defense, because he's really along with maybe, I guess, Brooks, that you can say these are your young parts that you see going forward for the next 2 to 3 years. So it's smart to build around that and put them in the primest position. I do lean towards thinking he's best on that left side. And so that does open up that blind side kind of guy that makes it a little more attractive than, let's say, if you're talking about a free agent suitor, Brendan, bringing in the guy going, look, you're not going to have to go from the strong side of the play and take that down. We got our young cat over there. He's going to take care of that. You get to go from blind side. You get to put up the maximum amount of pass rush production because you are going from that edge. It's just the way that it goes because the quarterback can't see you coming, of course. I think that there's some good options out there that are really expensive. I think 16, 17 million. You've probably seen the same thing for the top end guys. I gravitated towards, I've always had an affinity for the guy. I love the year that he was here. I know that he can do multi things, so we can have him as an outside stand-up linebacker, and he can go be the Leo when you want to go to 4-3. So now you have two guys on the edge, both in Taylor and this guy, that can both do that. The top end guys, I don't know that I can say the same thing about. And this guy's not top end. He's going to cost a lot of money, but he's not going to cost 16 to 17 million per year. In fact, probably cost you about 10 million a year, maybe a little bit more. It's not going to make you do a 3 or 4 year deal, probably a 2-year deal. That's Jadeveon Clowney. Is he perfect? No. If he was perfect, he would cost more. But This is the thing where you're getting from me the value, you're getting from me the flexibility, you're getting from me a guy that not only can he be an outside linebacker, they've been 3-4 times put a guy on the edge. They'll put a guy as a stand-up outside linebacker when Clowney's been in, for instance, Houston. And then they move Clowney in up over the guard. He's standing up over the guard. They call it the spinner role in these kind of defenses. So you can even move him in there. You give him even an extra little chess piece point on the board to move towards with that at that point. To me, it just makes so much sense. He already understands the culture here, Carroll, and what he's getting into here. I know I know for a fact he liked the city. I know for a fact he liked the locker room. I know he loved Clint Hurtt. So to me, that's the no-brainer one for me.
Yeah. Clowney would be nice if he can play that outside linebacker role in a 3-4, which he can. He's a versatile guy. That's one of the good things about him. He's a great example of a guy where I just feel like the memes, like people think he's way worse than he is, and he's way more of an injury risk than he is. It's like, some of you guys fall for the memes. I've noticed sometimes it's like the people who I get all the comments, Jamal Adams can't cover. Jamal Adams can't cover. It's like, are you sure? You should go check the numbers on that. I think you'll be surprised by what you find. But yeah, to me, Clowney is kind of another guy like that. Because we traded for him and he stupidly wanted $100 million contract and he got like 12. We all made fun of him because that was stupid. And he was a fool to think he was going to get that, but he can play. And if you bring him in a hybrid defense, then yeah, you're looking at a guy who can put his hand in the dirt, play as a defensive end. I would say he could be Leo or 5-tech, honestly. I think he can do both those roles, and he's an outside linebacker in a 3-4. I don't know about his coverage ability, but physically, he won't be completely out of his element like a Dunlap would be if he has to play in space. So
Yeah.
That's good. The other guy that kind of caught my eye, and this is a guy who would be a little more expensive, but I like him, and he's done the outside linebacker 3-4 thing before, would be Hassan Reddick. And he's somebody that I think a lot of Seahawks people are starting to circle the wagons on now that we know we're going to be doing this 3-4 thing.
Yeah.
He's had 2 really good seasons in a row. For some reason, he didn't get paid at all last year. I think he got like $8 million somehow, even though he had a double-digit sack season. It's like everyone forgot he existed. And then he had another double-digit sack season. So if you were willing to pay 4 years, $60 million or something like that, 4 year, $60 million deal, I think that's your guy. A lot of people are really excited about Von Miller and Chandler Jones, but with those guys, the age is starting to become a concern. And by the way, it should be pointed out that Chandler Jones got 7 sacks in 2 games last year, and then got 3.5 the whole rest of the season in, I think, 16 games. So,
and I don't have
to think about.
I don't have the data on that one, Brendan, but I bet if you look the last 3 years of Chandler Jones' production, it's been very similar to that, where it's been the boom comes in a couple of games, and then you don't see the consistency through. He struck me as that kind of player. He's been still not been bad, but just that's how his production stacked a little bit, which it's a misnomer a little bit than in the player that you're getting for, again, what the cost is that you're paying, which is top shelf prices. I do still lean back towards, if I got to pick, I go more Von Miller for whatever reason. I know he's a year older. But I have a little more trust in him if you're going to go on the high end of it. I do like the low end. Reddick gives you about as much versatility about as what Clowney does, being that he can play some Sam. You might even be able to throw at times Reddick into some Will stuff. I think he did off ball stuff. I think it was at Temple. He would even do that there. So he's got a lot in his bag. That's part of why it took him so long to develop, was he was a man without a position, jack of all trades, no real natural spot. And so that's maybe what held him up from getting paid as well. But his versatility and flexibility only help him here and being able to move him across the board. He would, the 4 years and $60 million, probably what he's going to get paid or something maybe near that. That makes me swallow hard there, Brendan. That gets stuck right here in my throat when I try to get that one down. That'd be tough for walking away. We signed Hassan Reddick. Yeah. What was it? 4 years, 60 million, 23 million guaranteed.
Yeah. I mean, maybe everybody will forget about him in free agency again. It happened last year for no reason that I can tell. So maybe it'll happen again this year. Maybe he's like a bad person in the locker room or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's see. At lower cost,
no
I'm definitely out. 3 years, 27. Something like you can kind of sign me up something like that. But boy, the 4 year 60. Oof.
Yeah, I mean, it would probably be an either or thing with him and Clowney, and then you would have to be a little creative with things in order to be able to handle the offensive line. Like, you really might then have to say, okay, Bobby, we can't bring you back. Sorry, you're cut. We need all that $16 million. Sorry. And that's what I would do, but that might not be what this team does.
Well, this is why I draw back to Clowney, right? Because if a lot of what we do is we say what we want to see happen, but a lot of what we also say is what we think we're going to really see happen, which tends very often with you and me, Brendan, to go different than what we say we'd like to see happen. And while we both are in favor of seeing the Wagner money kind of cleanly flushed because it's what's best for the team probably doesn't line up that way. They're probably going to renegotiate. Bobby even indicated in the last press conference of the year that he was be open to renegotiating. So it's going to probably happen. If that's the case, okay, we're going to deal from that reality. This was what circles me back to Clowney, because unlike Von Miller and Chandler Jones are going to cost that top end money, which again, to your point, then takes away then from the offensive line as this will work, right? When it all comes down in the wash from that, it means less money for the offensive line at that point. Okay, so rather than that, I don't get the top shelf guy on Miller. I get Clowney, but then I can still go get my offensive line handled, right? There's still a little bit of money left in the kitty there.
Yeah, and I think that would probably be a really good compromise there, where you get Clowney for $10 million a year instead of Reddick for 15. Like that's agreeable to me.
Yeah,
but so at that point, hypothetically, you would have Clowney and Taylor. And then Mayowa can be a backup outside linebacker. I think he's good enough to be a backup. That's fine. He's not.
I'm so down on him. I'm so down on. He had 2 pressures and like 550 snaps last year.
Yeah, but he never got to rush the passer. He was dropping back into coverage every single time.
I guess
I can't.
That's true. He did a lot of Sam. He did a lot of Sam. I'll give you that. He did. I just.
I'm not crazy about it either. But if we're going to transition to this 3-4 defense, it's not like we can gut the roster and rebuild it in one offseason. So trying to make it work with guys like that. And then at that point, you can probably just find some bargain basement guy to bring in to be like your other backup. That I'm not even really going to spend time talking about that, because at that point, you'd just be trying to find a body at that point.
Well, you know what you do with that? You know what that next, you get the body, but sorry to interrupt you. You get the body, but then what you do is that's your deadline deal next year. You're 5-1. The deadline deal you're making is your Von Miller for next year, is essentially your guy to go all in on at that moment, as you're sort of back your third wheel there.
Right. And I think that's about it for the 3-4 talk. I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands that going to a 3-4 is not just about waking up one morning and going, okay, we're going to go to a 3-4. You have to get the right players to do it. And there are some guys out there. One guy I forgot to mention in the defensive end talk was Calais Campbell, who I know is really old, but now that we're going to a 3-4, I think bringing him in is a little more interesting, even though he's like 58 years old or whatever.
Had an outstanding year. He had still posted an 80+ grade last year at like 37 years old for the Ravens. Not on the greatest of defenses there. And we know Schneider's got an affinity for him, a long held affinity for Calais Campbell. I mean, that's what Malik Mcdowell was drafted, because of Calais Campbell. They were trying to find their Calais in Malik. I think it really pushed it in that direction. So,
there's a guy we could go and kick the tires on, maybe Malik McDowell.
We got to switch to a 3-4. We're going to put some clothes on him first, though, and keep him away from the children. I mean,
who says? Go look at the NFL rule book. I don't think there's anything in there about needing to wear clothes.
You're gonna be the guy assigned with keeping him away from the children. You're the personal bodyguard on keeping Malik off the playgrounds, buck naked. That's on you. All right, we got another donation here from Tom Brendon. He says, would Seattle go after Lattimore from the Saints, or should they keep the same corners that played this season?
I think Lattimore just signed a $100 million contract, and the Saints have no way out of it without spending more money. So no,
Tom, Tom, he just hit the nail on the head with that. With these kind of deals, if you see a player sign a deal within the last year, you just automatically, especially one of these 4 or 5 year deals, all the bonus money, you can X them off. They're not going to move those guys in that first year. It's like us with Tyler Lockett right now. Will we move Tyler a year after signing a new deal? There's no way we would. The dead money hit is too substantial to do so. And so the Saints have to clear money this offseason. They're not going to be able to do that through Lattimore. They're going to have to do that through other pathways to accomplish that.
Yeah, the only players that teams do that for are players who are such obviously just wastes of space, like Wentz with the Eagles. The Eagles paid Wentz to go away. The Rams paid Goff to go away, but that was a very special circumstance. Lattimore is not. No.
Yeah, and those are quarterbacks, which are always going to be played by a different set of rules than everybody else, and is how that stuff fits up. But I know where you're going with that, Tom. I don't know if we're going with the same corners either. I was looking at this through the 3-4. We didn't talk about this about a couple of man corners, Brendan. But 2 guys that stand out to me are actually former Patriots. J.C. Jackson, who's the boatload guy, who I don't think Seattle's going to throw boatloads at him, but he's a man-based corner, could play the 3-4 stuff, right? He could do all that. What do you think on him?
I don't believe we're going to be doing very much man this year, to be perfectly honest. I don't buy it. I don't see how. I mean, how are you going to afford that? If you're going to do that, you need to bring in expensive corners. And are we going to be once again left in a situation where there's no money left to handle Wilson's offensive line? And when you have to understand now that part of choosing to bring him back is you got to remember at some point this offseason that, hey, we got to take care of that. That has to be a bigger priority than even this defense. Because if you're not going to do it, then just trade him.
Yeah. Well, and to your point on this, I was talking to Chad on this. He was telling me Vic Fangio runs a lot of just the 4-man pressures. He's not a heavy blitz guy in how he wants to run it. So we might be making some transitions to how we look as far as being attacking and somewhat pressure filled. But maybe not to the point of running a lot of man within that it'll still be the zone-based stuff, because that is still Fangio's game, is a lot of zone and how he goes about what he does. So yes, I think we're going back to the same. I think there's a deal in place for DJ Reed right now. Would you agree on that, Brendon? Would your inclination gut say there's a
there's been some indications that there is, which I would be very concerned that we're overpaying him then. I think he needs to test the market and find out that there's just not a lot of money for an outside corner who's 5'9", and then he comes back. I would be very concerned if we decided to pay him before he had the chance to scope out the market. I'll say that.
But then Sidney Jones, we're both on board with like 1 year, $3 million, maybe even 1 year, $4 million deal. It would make a lot of sense to me as well. I mean, I'm feeling good. I think that's.
I'll give Sidney 2 years, $8 million. Honestly, give me 2 years of Sidney Jones.
Yeah,
no problem.
I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, I don't believe that you can fit big time corners into this budget. I'm not seeing it. There are some big budget corners on the market this offseason, like J.C. Jackson, Chavarius Ward, Stephon Gilmore. But I think we talked about this a little last week, but I don't buy this idea that we're going to be playing a lot of man in 2022 because we don't have the players for it and we don't have the money to get those players and address all these other problems.
Bigger fish to fry. It'd be great to be able to get them, but we just have bigger fish to fry with it. So agree with you there. Randall with a $5 donation, and thank you, Tom. Randall, thank you. Says, where does the inside pass rush come from in a 3-4? 4-3, it's the 3 tech. The 0 eats blockers, blitz the middle linebacker, or twist from the offensive outside linebacker. Go ahead, Brendan. You got this one to start off.
Well, it depends. That's kind of the idea of a 3-4 defense. You're tricking the opposing offense constantly because they don't know where the pressure is going to come from. I think that's one of the big draws of the 3-4, especially if we're doing this hybrid thing. And you've got Jamal Adams, who could be coming from anywhere at any point on the blitz. And it depends. Like I said, the Cowboys under Wade Phillips had a defensive tackle named Jay Ratliff, played nose tackle for them. He had like 8 sacks one year, and he weighed 300 pounds. That's probably not going to be us, but it depends. And that's one thing about the 3-4 that some people prefer. It's a little easier to mix things up and be unpredictable when you're running out of the 3-4.
That's really the gist of it for me, Randall. What Brendan just said there at the end, which is essentially the benefit of going to the 3-4 is you manufacture production. With the 4-3, production needs to manufacture itself. The talent needs to go out and hunt. You make it work with your scheme. The zone blitz, for instance, which was the bedrock of the 3-4 Blitzburg in the late 80s and early 90s, right? It's just all about overloading you on one side, throwing more guys than you can block to one side, tricking you to slide your protection and then going out of it and then tacking the other side where you didn't slide the protection. And so it's a game you're playing now. It's less of you just saying, go up there and beat your man. Just go up and beat him. Find a way, beat his ass, beat him. And that's a little bit like, look, we're going to give you a one-on-one here. I want you to tack up on his right shoulder because he's going to feel the pressure coming in. So his initial step's going to be inside to pick up the blitzer. You got that outside shoulder. You should be able to get to that edge, and then get right to the quarterback. And that's simplistic, I know, but that's essentially like what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. Sorry, we got another donation. Very kind of you guys. Appreciate you. So $5 from Voodoo Magic. It says, Brando, great interview with Chad Brown. Thank you, Voodoo Magic. Chad Brown was awesome, by the way, Brendan, to talk to. Man, he was fun to talk to. I forgot how great he really was. Brendo, maybe you should interview some Seahawks from your hot tub. I'm telling you, man, there's a obsession with that hot tub, Brendan, that I've seen. I'm just saying, don't let your address out, man. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, by the way, it's unplugged right now. We're doing a bunch of work back there, so we had to unplug it. It's drained. If you come over right now, it's just a big bucket you can sit in. But I'll see about getting some Seahawks in there after it's hooked back up, I guess.
It'd be like the opposite of the Kevin Hart thing with the cold tub. Right. But no, thank you, Voodoo. And yeah, Chad was great. So many good little tidbits on there. He also an awesome player. As I was talking about him, the sad part about Chad Brown is that he had to play so many other positions outside of just putting his hand in the dirt and rushing and getting those sacks. Should have worn, really, if he had gotten those sacks, would be wearing a Hall of Fame jacket. Isn't today because he was the good soldier and sort of took one for a team on multiple levels, both in Pittsburgh and both here in Seattle. So very, very kind of interesting story in that respect. Wow, Brendan, got a big one here. We got a big one. $50 donation from Leland Kimball. My God, Leland, coming hard today. Jesus, thank you, people. You guys are awesome. Leland, you are amazing. Goodness. Says, both of you have got me through a difficult time in my life. You were a continuous search and became a team. I support both of you for your dedicated knowledge of football. Seahawks legends, in my opinion. Nelson, I got you on your next stream. Well,
All right, thank you, Leland.
Thank you so much, Leland. Very kind of you to say. And it's been very natural pairing here for me and Brendon to hook up like this and be able to do this. We're both on a similar arc, I think, as far as where we're heading, where this stuff's going, and our passion and knowledge and understand love of the sport. Very much equivalent, I think. So very well said, Leland. Agree with you 100%. You're always very kind on my channel. I appreciate it. I know he's a member on mine. I'm sure he's a member on your. We're happy to get you guys through. We help you guys get through, inform you a little bit. That's about as perfect as it gets, isn't it, Brendon? As far as goals and creating these channels and having these things come across. But thank you so much. Awesome of you, Leland. You're amazing, brother. Megan Gok Roger. By the way, I'm going to make you pronounce that last name too, Brendon.
She taught me how to do it, actually.
She did me too.
She actually taught me how to do it.
She put up with about 40 attempts on my part before she's like, okay, I'm going to teach you now. Lady Danenda. Thank you for the $5 donation, Megan. She says, just wanted to thank you both for making this Aussie 12 feel so welcome and a part of the family. Looking forward to catching up with you all soon. Thank you so much, Megan. Appreciate it. You are very kind for saying so. And hey, welcome all to the family. Well, down under or not, you're 12. No doubt about it. Okay. Jacob Kessinger with a 25. My goodness, you guys are being very kind today. Thank you so much. $25 donation from Jacob Kessinger. You're awesome. He says, Titans negative $6 million and have to re-sign Landry. Could you see him shaking free in this free agent pool? If so, would you break the bank on a guy like that for a hybrid system? He's projected 4 years at $17.3 million per year. Woo, it's a lot of money on Landry.
I might be willing to do that, but I feel like the Titans are going to do whatever it takes to keep Landry. I think they're going to restructure Tannehill. I think they're going to let some of their offensive linemen go. Like what's their left tackle? Luan. I think they're going to let him go, and they're going to keep Landry. I feel like that's the guy you move heaven and earth to keep, but we'll see. And he'll be on the list if he shakes free.
He will. I'll tell you, another one of those guys. I hard to pay the 4 years at 17. That's the market rate, right? He's going to be in there, so I understand that's probably what he's going to get. But for that guy, a little bit of an injury history to him, though he's not an old guy. He's not like Von Miller or Chandler Jones. That still is such a steep price to pay. Versus what that's going to take from other resources to pull that off, to bring him in. I do think the Titans are going to have to pull some magic off, though. To your point on this, Brendon, I agree with you, though. I think Luan goes because you got a defensive-minded head coach. Where are they always going to lean? To the defensive side of the ball. You got an offensive-minded coach. Where are they going to lean? Offensive side of the ball. So that you're going to see probably the personnel shake out similarly because of that, I would say. But my goodness, you guys, Jacob, Leland, Megan, Randall, Voodoo Magic, thank you so much. Tom Cox, multiple donations. My goodness, you guys are so kind. I really do appreciate it. Brendon, I want to get a couple other subjects in. I know we just passed the hour mark here, but I want a couple of items I want to get into. First off, Quandary Digs. Corbin Smith had a news article out here recently about the fact that Seahawks have now opened negotiations with Quandary Digs, which I think is kind of telling that you're opening them now, not at the start of the preseason, not after the injury now. What are you making of these reports? Do you think they're legit, or is Seattle throwing one of their little PR games at us?
I think that they are legit, but the way Quandary is talking, he's making it pretty clear that he's trying to get as much money as he can. So it would not surprise me if they are very, very far apart right now. Like a giant Grand Canyon-sized hole between where Quandary is and where the team is. So it would not surprise me if we still got to free agency and he hadn't been signed yet. I'm not taking anything away from Quandary. He's obviously been great for us ever since he got here. I think you could argue that since he got traded for over the last 2.5 years, he might have been our best player on defense over that period of time. That's a little bold, but he's made 2 Pro Bowls, and he did invigorate the defense when he showed up in 2019 as well, a little bit. So I think he is worth money, but the way he's talking, it sounds like he thinks he's getting like something a little less than what Jamal Adams got, which I can't do that. I am hoping that things conspire to where you can maybe get him back at like 3 years, 30 million. And even then, if you want to do that, I think you need to incorporate heavy void years. I'm talking like 3 years, 30 million, and then you put 10 million of that into 2 void years at the end of the contract. Because then it's really just 3 years, 20 million. And then you can spread that out so it's not so bad. That to me is what it takes. That gives you like a 3-year window where you've got this Pro Bowl caliber safety, and he's not going to be breaking the bank. Because I used this analogy in a video the other day, but once you've done the Jamal Adams thing, you've already kind of used up your credit on defensive backs. And I know Carroll loves his defensive backs, but I'm just not looking to do too much more than that. And by the way, I say the same of DJ Reed. He's kind of a part of that deal as well, because he's also a defensive back. To me, if you're going to bring them back, then you better be ready to hit the void years hard, like putting a third of their contracts into void years. To me, if you don't do that, you're not going to have enough money.
It's the only way I'll come out the other. And there's a lot of, I'm sure, people in your subs, my subs, that are going to be very happy by Quandary coming back. We've heard them you shout loudly about, we got to re-sign him. There's the only place that I would be able to be like, well, okay, I'm okay with this, is if you came out of this by dumping like 10 million in void years on that 4th year you talked about, like a 3-year deal, and the 4th year's got just 10 million. Even if it's that, I'm fine with that. As I've said, I don't have any problem with sacrificing future cap space to maximize the now. And if that's what you're doing in general terms, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you could do 5 mil in the 4th year, 5 mil in the 5th year,
right?
Because you can do multiple void years.
You can, but the only thing is the bonus accounts only in 4-year increments. So unless you put like, you can sometimes do like a roster bonus, but then that's also where you can cut the player before that roster bonus. So that's where it gets tricky, because it doesn't technically need to go into the guarantees pile until it's into the guarantees pile, if that makes sense. So
yeah,
that might be
there's a little bit of voodoo here.
Would you do it 10 million? If I got to stack 10 million on a 4th year?
Oh, I think I probably would. I don't know if I'm going to be alive in 4 years. None of us do.
At this rate, yeah.
The cap might be $600 million by then. I don't know. Sure.
Exactly. So that's outside of that though. If we sign into some big like 13 million per year on a 3-year deal, even that's going to really that's going to make the tough for the rest of the build out this roster. It really will, from that starting point going, okay, now we got to go get to the offensive line now. Like, that's our big market deal. Now we'll get to say nothing if we signed both him and DJ Reed. Could you imagine how little space there would be left between those two guys at the end of that? Like,
Right. Well, in my video that I did on Quandary and DJ, one thing that I did mention was that you could, if you used the void years liberally, and you brought both those guys back at maybe a little bit less than we're projecting. I said 3 for 30 for Quandary and 3 for 24 for DJ. Let's say DJ Reed's market gets compressed a little bit because he's 5'9". You could make it very reasonably so the first year cap hit combined for those two guys is only $5.5 million, and I can live with that. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah. No, if it's in the name of squeezing for this contract, going for it in the now, understanding this is the choice you've made from this, where this roster is, then all I'd ask is just be succinct with it. Stay consistent. You're going for it, then go for it. Don't do the going for it now, but then we'll do other moves to show we're not going for it. But we'll keep our cap space. But no, squeeze and press as many of the contracts in as you can possibly get in there to fill this roster out as big, as deep, as talented as you absolutely possibly can. I will be in favor of movies like that, even if I'm not in favor of signing a particular guy like Diggs, going, well, his age, the amount of money you're paying, and I agree with you, he has been the best player on this defense the last couple of years. But there's just enough of those detraction points where you go, boy, along with the Adams signing and the money you paid to him.
Yeah, and I don't want to lose sight of the fact that he did suffer a devastating injury a couple months ago, and you never know if a guy's going to be the same after that. So it's not impossible. No,
it should be. And again, what's the chances of re-injury, right? Earl Thomas broke his leg and then broke his leg again. Is there a chance that we could face the same thing with this safety, where it has a high likelihood of happening to him again if it's popped once? I'm not trying to get too dark with it, but I mean I think it's real questions this front office has got to ask before they dip into the $13 million range, which sounds like he's wanting. Tom Cox, another $5 donation. Thank you, Tom. Says, what player in the draft would you be happy with becoming a Seahawk? Would you draft by best player available or go base off need? Hold on now, Brent. I want to ask you this for a second, okay? Of the guys you think are going to be in the back end of the first round, not those top 12 guys. Don't give me Thibodeau. Don't give me Hutchinson. Give me a name of the guy about 15 to 32 who you think will go.
Well, you know, Falele is my guy.
Oh, okay.
He's probably still in that range, even though the Jake Curhan thing happened, and I don't want to throw away that miracle because that was a miracle that a guy like Jake Curhan goes out there and looks like he belongs on a football field. But Falele is still kind of my guy. He's one of the guys that I'm definitely into. What's the name of the center guy? Linderbaum. If
That's
he
right.
falls into that range, he would be another guy that I really have my eyes on. As of right now, those would probably be my two main guys.
Let me give you a situation too. Daniel Falele's there for you to pick, or you could go get a guy like Nicholas Fortet of Ohio State in that second round, and you've not addressed the left tackle in free agency. So you're in the draft. So
Yeah.
this is the Tom's base point, right? Best player available you think is Falele as far as upside, but you got Nicholas staring you in the face.
Oh, you have to go by need. Especially if you're going to switch to a 3-4, I think.
Because no, this is tackle.
Left tackle. Yeah. But I'm saying in general, if you're going to switch to a 3-4 and have all these new needs, you need to address those needs. Yeah. Because I don't want to go into 2022 with our pants down trying to do this hybrid defense. Cautionary tale in what year was that? 2020. The Cowboys brought in Mike Nolan, and he tried to do a hybrid defense. And it was terrible because nobody on that defense knew how to play in a 3-4. They were all 4-3 guys. They had one of the worst defenses in NFL history. And Mike Nolan quickly got fired. Yeah. That's the kind of stuff that can happen if you don't get the right players for what you're trying to do. So I really needed to go by need unless you address every need in free agency, which you're not going to do.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough and understandable in that. If I was to say like a guy that I would love to see slide, probably wouldn't happen. Man, it'd be a dream scenario to see a guy like Hamilton of the Notre Dame fall. I think Linderbaum, the guy you mentioned, is a guy who's got a chance of falling, and I think he's got a lot of similarities to as far as potential. Different player entirely, but potential to what Creed Humphrey gave. And if he happened to be sitting there as far as from my standpoint, kind of a dream scenario for guys like, maybe got a potential to actually be in there, I might jump on that guy first and foremost as my guys as being if they're there. But kind of really hard to shake out. It's not quite yet for me mock draft time because you still got to get through free agency to figure out who's really going to need what, and then informs you who will then be truly available based on what those teams moves are made at.
Right.
Sorry, a couple more donations here. Hang in here with me, Brendan.
No problem.
Jacob Kessinger with a $10 donation. Thank you, Jacob. Very kind of you. It says, let's abuse the living hell out of Void years to go for it the next 4 years. Just say, F the future. We want a championship now. I'm with Jacob on this. I'm riding with Jacob on this. And by the way, guys, out there, everybody listen, me and Brendan were two guys in the boats who saying, let's go ahead and get to the rebuild side. We may need to take this down this offseason. We didn't make this choice on this path. I always like to make sure I'm proud because people will hear kind of what they want to hear sometimes, Brendan. So I always like to chamber this right. We weren't on this path, but we're going on this path now because this is what the organization has told us they want to do and where they want to go. So all we're asking is that's what you told us to do. Now be consistent in what you told us with your actions.
Yeah. I actually made a video earlier today talking a little bit about this, where the goal should be to open like a 4-year window. And then you go all out trying to win a Super Bowl for the next 4 years. And the thing is, I think some people think that when I say go all in, I mean trying to win a Super Bowl 1 year. No. Most of the guys that I'm advocating we sign are not guys who only have 1 good year left. Guys like Clowney, guys like Gerald Everett, Marlon Mack, Teron Armstead, they should have several good years in front of them. And then when you get to the other side of that 4-year window, Wilson's probably going to be in the last year of his contract. You're not going to want to extend him at that point because he'll be 37 or something like that.
Yeah.
And very few quarterbacks have ever excelled past the age of 37. So at that point, you might be like, we've got all this dead money. We've got an aging franchise quarterback. Let's just send Wilson to somewhere else, wherever he wants to go for whatever we can get. And then we'll just take it on the chin for 1 year with all this dead cap money. And then we'll come back in 2027 and we'll try to build something new. But I'm trying to find ways to open up that 4-year window, and I think it can be done. You're not going all in for just one chance at it. You're going all in for 4 chances at it. Maybe 3, but I think you can do 4.
Yeah. And that's because you can constantly push the cap forward. As I say, the cap is real. Brendan used the greatest analogy for this, like the Matrix. It's not, you can't break the rules, but you can highly bend them, right? And you can bend them over a multiple year span. And then you just make, as Brendan said, the peace with the fact that when the pain comes, we take our whooping at that time. We bleed out when we got to bleed out, and we take that year and we're going to suck that year, but then we turn right back around and we're back into engaging back into a winning front off that, looking for the next quarterback, looking to stack back the roster back up. But just go in, man. That's just do the thing you guys have said you want to do now, then do it. Just be clear with it. So I hope so. Randall with a $5 donation says, if Diggs walks, and thank you, Randall, for multiple donations. If Diggs walks, what do we do at safety? I don't trust Blair. Slide Ugo. Neil is a Jag. Is the guy from the Cowboys curse? Strong safety. We draft a guy.
There are a couple decent options here. You could go get Jamal Adams, his old buddy, Marcus May, because he just had an injury-laden year. He would probably be pretty cheap. There are some other aging veteran guys that I kind of like I like McCourty from New England, if you can find a way to get him for a 1-year cheap deal, which he's 35, so he'll probably be okay with that. There were a couple other guys. I think I made a free safety video recently where I went over some of the guys that I like. Off the top of my head, I can't remember all their names, but the idea is, of course, you don't go get the Honey Badger or Marcus Williams or Anthony Harris guys. Those guys are going to be more expensive than Diggs. At that point, just get Diggs back. Rodney McLeod is a free agent this offseason. And this is an interesting one because of the Desai connection to Sean Gibson. They were together last year, and Tashawn Gibson has been a pretty good player in some recent seasons. So,
yeah. I mean, they could probably find one through that. I like those guys. I still think your McCourty idea is the one that makes a lot of sense because you're still getting good quality there. Had a good year last year. It's a 1-year deal he probably plays on before he retires. Maybe it's a 2-year deal. You stack a little void money with it, then you can squeeze him in at a much lesser cost than what Diggs was going to cost. There's a guy named Veron McKinley who will be there in the second round. Another kid named Hamilton, I think, out of Illinois, who's a real ball hawk. McKinley, to me, Brendan, looks very similar to like Earl Thomas, but he's not going to go up as high as Earl went. But they're kind of ball hawk guys you could put back there. I think a free safety, if you really had to go in the second round, you want to pick. This a lot like the zero tech in the 3-4, where if you just can't get it done in free agency, you can always go that route if you really have to. Say nothing going into the third round, because a guy like that there's a history of guys being selected the safety position in the second, third round and coming in and being able to kind of start from you. It's not you wouldn't put it in the same sort of like learning curve as you do quarterback or lineman or a pass rusher. They can kind
of. My issue is when a free safety makes a mistake, it's a 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's why I don't really want to start a rookie at free safety this season. I would normally be on board with things like that, but to me, if you get a guy who, even if he's good, the learning curve is going to kill you because every time he makes a mistake, he's given up a 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's just, then this is why I get to that McCourty thing, because I don't want to pay the big money out there. Okay. We don't want to trust say nothing if I really like to put that second round pick anyway towards getting actually an offensive lineman or something that's going to have more of an impact. So this is where we come back around to, okay, how do we get to the guy that's giving us quality, but isn't costing us a lot, but still giving us a little quality? That's where you land with, to me, on the McCourty side of it.
Yeah. My dream scenario this offseason would actually be get Jason Kelsey and McCourty on 1-year deals and then draft a center and a free safety. They get a year to learn and be groomed while you start those guys. And then the next year, those guys probably retire and then you've got their heirs waiting. To me, that would be the ideal.
Agreed. No, that would be that would be an ideal situation if you could pull that off. Jacob Kessinger with another $5 donation says, retool. Thank you, Jacob. Multiple donos. Retool with proven talent in free agency. Draft for depth, which is what Brendan was just talking about. Mm-hmm. This year at positional needs, that's all I want to see this off season. I love it.
Yeah, it
I mean,
seems very doable, very possible.
and yeah, you can get this done. It's not shooting for the stars. There's places you can add talent here. It's just being smart where you put your money and putting your money in the proper places, right, Brendan? Not putting it in spots that's not going to get you enough impact, or put wrongly, get you the stuff that's really going to get you the most bang for the buck.
Limit the 1-year deals.
That's right. Please, no more 1-year deals this year. Please, no more no bargain basement shopping either. No dollar stores. No dollar stores this year. This is John, Pete. No dollar stores. Thank you, Jacob, though, for the donation. Tom Cox with a $5 dono. Thank you, Tom. He says, would you take the deal Colin Cowher suggested the Eagles would send 4 ones and Slay for Russ?
Are we in a vacuum, or are we in the universe that we currently reside in? Because the thing that kind of got me off the idea of trading Wilson was I don't want this regime to inherit those picks, because I don't trust them to use them properly for multiple reasons. We haven't drafted well lately, and Pete at his age might just turn around and try to flip those picks for veterans because he's trying to win right now, which, I mean, I get, it depends on who you trade for, of course, but I don't think it would end that well. But if you were saying you were going to bring in a new regime, like you were going to bring in a new GM and coach, then I might be willing to do that, because those first round picks for Philly are very valuable because they're all this year.
Mm-hmm.
I might be willing to do that if you gave me a new GM and coach as well.
Say nothing for Slay coming if you're, well, I mean, let's operate within the reality of where we are with this, Brendan, where, because I was going to ask you about this anyway. Neither me nor Brendan want to see Russell Wilson traded. We've covered it ad nauseum. It's not where our personal standpoint is. We also have to acknowledge, being analysts on this, that the lay of the land out there is Russell's changing profile pictures and there's rumors flying in every different direction. And so we do have to address this a little bit, to a degree at least. Of the teams that are being talked about out there, Brendan, including this Eagles team, I think the 4 ones and Slay, that may be legitimate as far as somewhat in the neighborhood of the right value. Of the teams with the ammunition to get, let's just break this down real quick on this. You got the Giants, you got the Eagles, you got the Steelers, and there's one other team I'm not thinking of. Who's my other team? Washington. Thank you. So we got 4 teams really. Let's just say that's really going to be your 4. Maybe the Colts slide in there, but this is your 4 that really are we can see Russell wanting to go there, not just them being a spot where that team wants it and Seattle will be willing to trade him to him, right? That's got to be a factor in this. Which team of those gives you the best as far as who's the best spot for you in the Seattle organization? I know you don't want this coaching staff to make these picks, but you're going to be maybe stuck there in that place.
I'm 100% in on the Philly or Giants trade, Eagles or Giants, because they have multiple first round picks in this draft. That's way more valuable than picks in like 3 years, which you don't know where the pick's going to be. You don't know, God, you don't even know what the value of that pick's going to be by that point. Like, it's 100% the Eagles and Giants, because they have multiple first round picks in this draft.
All right. So here's your choice. 4 ones. Sorry to interrupt you. 4 ones and, James Bradbury, or 4 ones and Slay. So James Bradbury, Giants, 4 ones, Eagles, Slay. Which deal do you take? If Russ is like either one, whatever.
I would do the Giants, because I think that team is more likely to produce high picks even with Wilson in the following years.
Very nice.
And I mean, even with Wilson, I'm sorry, that team's a dumpster fire. What are they going to do? How are they going to be good? Even if they get a good quarterback, like, what are they going to do in 2022? Or no, I'm not seeing it. The only thing I can say is their division is bad. They should be able to farm wins against that division, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but if Washington gets a quarterback, and to your point, if they get a quarterback and the Cowboys are still what they are, and then now you're kind of going, well, wait, hold on, where are we at with this? But I think I would be with you on that. That would probably push me to that. I hadn't thought of that, Brendan. That's a great direction to think of from that standpoint of those future picks.
For all the jokes that people make about the Philly front office, because they passed up on DK for JJ Arcega-Whiteside, and they passed up on Justin Jefferson for Jalen Reagor. I actually like the way that front office does business. When they feel like they need to move, they move. And they're willing to flip things over if they think that what they have is not good enough. Like, They got the sense that Chip Kelly wasn't the guy. They didn't wait 4 more years for him to prove it. No, they just said, get out of here.
Yeah.
They paid Carson Wentz to go away because they thought he wasn't the guy anymore. And they actually made the playoffs despite a $40 million cap hit to a quarterback playing in another city. So I think that front office deserves some credit. And I think that if you gave them Wilson, they could be competing for a Super Bowl or at least having a really good record. The Giants, that's a completely rudderless franchise right now.
100%. I've got a lot of respect for what the Eagles do. They draft really well. Landon Dickerson last year they drafted. I didn't like the Hurts pick, but and like I said, Breaker was that up, but that's not normally where they're at on their drafts. They built that offensive line through their draft, built it smartly. They overall do pretty good in that realm of things. I think Devontae Smith will turn into a pretty good receiver for them on that, a decent guy they selected last year. So I'm with you. I lean to the Giants. If you got to take a pick, if you got to go, if Russ is going to force it, let's go that direction of it. Let's take it. I still don't think that anybody knows what's going on with the situation, Brendan. I still think that just because Russell changes his profile pick, that doesn't mean that there's something imminent coming down the board or whatnot.
Yeah, I honestly get the sense that he was trying to. I think, what was it, at the Pro Bowl he was doing? No, it was after the Pro Bowl. He was on a radio show. And he made some comments that were like, the plan is to stay in Seattle. I want to retire as Seahawk. I kind of got the sense that he was trying to quiet everybody down. He didn't come out definitively, but he came out as definitively as I think can reasonably be expected. So to me, when I heard him say that, I was like, okay, this isn't going to happen. And it may still happen, but I'm seeing a lot of barriers to it. Like, Wilson needs to want to trade. The team needs to want to trade him, and there has to be a team willing to offer enough to get the Seahawks on board, and Wilson has to approve of that team. Right. Until I see those barriers start to fall, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't.
And every one of those barriers in itself has an easy way to just not getting out the gate. Say nothing of stacking up 4 on top of each other. There's a reason why Hall of Fame quarterbacks aren't traded, even if maybe they are usually in a disgruntled situation. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't until they're at the very end of their career and the team's gotten all of the production out of them. So again, and where me and Brendan still both stand on this is that we'd like to see him stay. That's where we both end up on this, is that please,
Yeah. If you're not going to completely blow it up, then don't blow up half of it. Just like either blow it up or go hard to win now.
Right. Which includes keeping Wilson. And even if it's the behest sometime, almost to this deal in this point where I say, look, well, Russ, I'm keeping you under contract. I'm not eating $26 million this year. I'll talk to you about this next year. We're going in on this year. And are you in a ride? You're going to retire? You're going to go at that? I'm almost at that point of it where I'd be, but I don't think they would. I think if he really pressed, and that they would probably accommodate him if that was to go down that track. One last thing, Brendan, I wanted to finish up with on this. This is just your general where your perspective is on this. I am certainly, and this is not a shot at Russell necessarily. This is from a Brady thing a couple of years ago. Is he retiring? Is he not? Where's he going to go? Where's he going to? And then the Rodgers thing now, and just it's turning over and over again, and it's dominating the narrative on, instead of people talking about football, we got to talk about this crap. And you see the quarterbacks manufacturing their ability to get themselves in the news. And I get that the quarterbacks are always held up on a little bit of this elevated pedestal. It's gotten a little bit old for you in the last couple of years, where it seems like the ego side of it on some of these quarterbacks is starting to get a little bit to a point of like, you guys remember this is a team game, right? Like,
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit of that, but it keeps things interesting. And it's actually, it's funny that you mentioned the ego thing. Me and a couple guys were talking in stream late last night. Apparently Brady is going to appear in and produce a film that comes out in, I think, next year. Have you heard about this?
No.
It's basically 4 old ladies, it's a road trip movie. 4 old ladies travel to watch what was the Super Bowl with the Falcons and Patriots? It was Super Bowl 51. Yeah, 51. Right. So it's actually a road trip comedy with like Sally Field in it and 3 other old lady actresses. And Brady's going to appear at the end because the idea is they're all lifelong Patriots fans and they get to get to go to the Super Bowl and watch it. And it's the Patriots Falcons Super Bowl. And we were talking about it. The name of the movie is 80 for Brady. And I think it was David in my chat last night. He was like, man, Brady's ego is so big. He had to put his name in the title of the damn movie. when he's probably only going to be in it for 3 minutes.
That's so true. That's so true. Can we go find something phonetic with Brady? What rhymes with Brady? Lady, 80. All right, that's it. They're old. They're not all 80. They're only 70. Close enough.
Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely a little bit of ego going on here, but I mean, the quarterbacks pretty much always win Super Bowl MVP, and the quarterbacks pretty much always win league MVP. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised. And it's the quarterbacks who are making 18% of the salary cap if they're above average. So I guess it shouldn't be that surprising.
I guess it's not surprising me too much. It's just it's an annoyance, especially because it seems like if it's a volume, it's turning up in recent years. It's always kind of been up at a higher pitch, but it's sort of getting even more and more so turned up. And it's the manufactured element. Maybe it's just the social media part that puts into it. But you just go, oh my God, you're fighting the eye roll at every turn. It's like, come on, guys, really? Like, is it? Do you need this really? Is this really? Is this massaging the ego enough here for you? But again, not a shot at anybody in particular, just in general, what you see a little bit.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when wide receivers were the divas. It was always the wide receivers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, quarterbacks used to be boring and buttoned up and nerds and just like do my job.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison was the boring one, and it was always weird that it's like a prolific wide receiver who keeps his mouth shut. This is weird. And then we found out about Marvin Harrison's dark side.
Dark, very dark. One I would never have guessed on that. He even has like a real kind looking face, and you hear some of the stories. You're like, damn, Marvin's living on the wild side of life a little bit here. Well, any other thoughts you got on going on anything with this team right now? We've got the combine coming. It sounds like we had 125 players that were going to go out, but they're not going to go out now. So we're going to get a full combine experience. Maybe we can do a combine stream day or something at some point here.
I'm definitely going to make a lot of videos on the combine. I thought about maybe doing some streams, but it happens during the day, and
true. There's not a lot of people probably watching midday in a work week.
I mean, I might have it NFL Network on in the background and stuff, but we might be able to make something like that work. That might be fun. I'm definitely excited for the combine. There's definitely some work that needs to be done in this draft, even more so now that we're switching to a 3-4. To me, it just increases the need of bringing in certain types of players, and that does carry over to the draft. Yeah. So that's interesting, but there isn't a whole lot else to say. Nothing's happening yet. Yeah. About the most we're getting is the report that we're negotiating with Quandary Digs, but nothing may come of that. Like I said, I expect the two parties to be very far apart right now, and they may meet in the middle, but it will take a while, or they may never meet in the middle.
Give me one before we go. What's going to be the first signing off the board? If you were to make a prediction, could be on the team, could be maybe they don't re-sign by the team and they just go to free agency. Who's your first signing?
For the Seahawks.
For the Seahawks.
I kind of feel like getting Sidney Jones back would be pretty quick and easy.
I like it.
I think Sidney Jones, just because you can just be like, you can probably go up to him and be like, hey, 2 years, $8 million. And then he'll be like, okay, I was a huge bust until I came here. Like, why would I leave here? I'm trying to rebuild my reputation, which has been in the dirt ever since I tore my Achilles in the pro day.
Yeah.
Or was it the combine or the pro day?
Pro day.
Right, for pro day. So I think that could get done very quickly. There might be some vet min guys who are just like, I'm happy just to stick around. Like maybe you offer Will Dissly the vet minimum and he's like, okay.
Yeah.
But I would go with Sidney Jones.
All right. I got Bobby Wagner on a renegotiation. That's my first deal.
That's on the table as well. Here's the question with Bobby, though. Here's a little bit of a question I have with Bobby. Do you extend him or do you cut him and bring him back at a reduced cost?
I think it's a renegotiation where they say to Bobby, we're going to sign you to 1 more year deal. And we're going to give you, rather than cut you, we'll give you a good base salary or like even guarantee it. But it'll be like, we're only going to get like probably $6 million of savings off Bobby, in my opinion. You end up on probably a 1 year, $10 million deal is where you probably land. And then they say, we'll agree not to obviously franchise you, though that's not a threat at that age and that point. And then they let him walk. Then they let him walk. I think it's a 1 year deal because I just don't think, outside of them adding avoidable year that we talked about and saying, okay, we'll give you this through blah, 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 blah. I don't see how they I don't see how he gets on a 3 or 4 year deal. How do you pay a middle linebacker at his age that's showing those signs of slowing down 3 years or 4 years? You know,
I mean, 1 year, 10 million still kind of makes me want to puke. That's about 8 million more than I want to be spending. But
I
yeah,
don't want to be here on that. Let me preface that, Brendan. It's not what the deal that I would want to sign. I think I think we both advocate for $16.6 million is the savings that you get by moving on from Bobby Wagner. The amount of stuff you could accomplish with $16.6 million, you know, it's a lot. I remember I broke it down. You could get a DK Metcalf extension. You could sign Jensen. You could sign the Teron Armstead. And with their first year cap hit, 65% of that is eaten up by a Bobby Wagner release. You only need to find 35% of the rest of their contractual first year value in your books after you release Bobby off that. I mean, that's as stark as you get to me as far as the difference in what you're building roster wise. And it has nothing to do with Bobby not being a good player. It's just that's a lot of assets. It's a significant portion.
Well, is he actually a good player? I'm not. We have this debate all the time in our streams where, are we sure he's even good anymore when he doesn't rush the passer at all? He can't cover. Like I mean, I'm sorry, but all he really does is farm tackles. And in the modern NFL, how valuable is that? I mean, we've seen teams go up against the Seahawks these last few years and just go, you know what? We're not even going to bother running the ball because it's a waste of time. Let's just throw the ball, and they destroy us. Remember Buffalo in 2020?
Oh, yeah.
Like we rolled in there and they were like, yeah, we're not even going to bother running the ball because it's a waste of time. We're just going to throw the ball, and Bobby can't cover and Brooks can't cover and da-da-da-da-da-da. I don't know how much value a guy like a Bobby Wagner has. He can't cover. He doesn't have value blitzing. He doesn't make plays in the backfield. I wonder how much that's actually worth.
The stat you just mentioned, the backfield, I think he had 3 or 4 tackles for losses last year with all the snaps he played. 2. It was 2. I mean, just a very small number. And this is not anywhere near prime Bobby years and the type of player and the impact he would give you at that time. And I think it's been kind of a slow, subtle drop off from 18 onwards, where he had that almost defensive player of the year like performance. So it's not been as like snap quick. It's just been this slow degradation a little bit, but it still is there. And again, what has been the impact the last couple of years in paying him this huge salary? I know that, it's not his fault. We can't respect. Well, it's not his fault that the corners aren't cut. Well, yeah, but he's the highest paid player on a defense that's sitting in somewhere the 20s in their ranking over the last couple of years. So obviously putting that amount of money just on, at least on the face of that, isn't necessarily the smartest way to go in allocating your resources. And that's what it's all about. You have a finite amount of resources. How do you allocate them smartly to get the most out of them?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not saying Bobby's bad now, but I look at a guy like a Micah Parsons, and I know that's an extreme example, but he's lining up in the middle, he's lining up on the outside, he's lining up at the edge, he's in coverage, he's lining up as a cornerback sometimes, and I'm like, that is so much more valuable than Bobby.
Yeah. Well, and and Bobby's cost him what he's cost me. And even a guy like this been on a fairly similar career trajectory. I think Levante David down there in Tampa Bay, right? Came around the same time. You know, both those guys, Bobby's got to beat in production, beat him in accolades, but Bobby's making about double what David's making. You know, I mean, he's significant extra portion here in what you're paying this guy. And you've got to get an impact if you're making that kind of payment at that point. Again, understanding how you could be building a team otherwise if you didn't go that direction of it. I agree with you. I don't think he's bad, but he's not impactful anymore. And that's really the key of when you're trying to assess what to do with Bobby next. That's the key.
Yeah. And part of me wants him out of here just so it forces the team to be a little more creative in how they do things. Like I was talking about this in the stream the other day. One thing that really, looking back at it, makes me mad is that last year, Bobby Wagner would have played every single defensive snap if he didn't get hurt, right? Because he had 100% of the snaps and then he got hurt. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, you can't find one snap all year where you go, you know what? Let's get my younger, faster linebackers on the field for just this one snap. Let's put Brooks and Barton out there, or let's go dime with Brooks in the middle or something. Yeah. And it just bothers me that you have this aging linebacker with a ton of miles on him, and you're not creative enough to find one play over the course of 1,200 plays that season where you go, you know what? I think Bobby can take a breather for this one. No, they're just going to throw him out there every play. And I'm sorry, but to me, I'm sitting here looking at it, and I feel like it's just Pete being lazy and just being like, I don't want to think about it. I'm just going to put Bobby out there because he's Bobby. I don't have to think about that anymore.
Sentimentality too, right? Of what he did in the
Mhm.
past. I know he's been here for so long and he's done all this, and I've got to honor that. And I understand that's coming from a good or okay, that's coming from a point of integrity, but at the same point in time, that point of integrity can end up costing you the bottom lines of being a good team or not. And just holding on to a guy much longer than you should. So I again, the other part of this too is you have his heir apparent waiting in the wings. And has been waiting in the wings for 2 years. That's all the other part of this within this vacuum that exists is that this guy's been playing the first round pick that you got 2 years ago is playing out of position until you move on from Bobby, on top of the money that you save, on top of the way you can allocate those resources better.
Yeah, Bill Belichick once cut the leader of his defense and one of his best players on defense and then won the Super Bowl. So I don't want to hear this sentimentality garbage. I'm not.
A UW guy at that, a UW guy in Lawyer Malloy. So yeah, I do remember that. Well, another great show here, Brendon. I really appreciate you for coming on. Again, go over if you aren't already, please go over. Seahawks Brendon Nelson is the channel. Go on over there, sub to his channel. We do this on a weekly basis, go back and forth. He's on my channel this week. I'll be on his channel next week. He covers daily content, nearly almost daily, I think, just about, and sometimes a couple times a day. So please go over there and check his channel out. I love doing this stuff. I'm getting excited, Brendon, because we're going to get into some real meat and potato stuff here real soon with free agency on the horizon, re-signings coming up, combine coming up. We're going to be looking at some more prospects here.
Yeah, our next show is on the 3rd. The combine will have been underway for a couple days by then, so we may have combine stuff to actually go into on our next show. So that'll be fun.
100%. And we're both starting, I think, getting through some prospects, taking a look at it. So we'll be doing some future show stuff too, where we talk a little bit more about some future prospects and stuff. I do have a question for you, Brendon. I asked Chad this at the end. I want to see what your response was, being a UW fan. Last question on this. Colorado Buffalo national title team plays the UW national title team. I know this might be a little young for you. Who do you think wins that game?
Yeah, that's unfortunately a little before my time, but I do know that 91 Washington team was pretty dominant. Who was the quarterback on the Colorado team? Was that Cordell Stewart or was that?
No, it was one of those not named guys that you wouldn't know.
Oh, they had a Ken Dorsey type.
Yeah. It was one of those guys like he's college, didn't do anything in the pros type dude.
Okay.
But I mean, to me, Washington just would have beat the doors off him.
I have to believe that. I mean, that Washington team was special.
Edmund was a freak of nature. Like he #1 overall pick in the draft in the NFL. And he played on that artificial turf, right? Tore his knee, done almost instantaneously. But he was a legit like Aaron Donald type. I mean, I'm not trying to overstate. Like he was legit in that realm of things as a player. And it's so sad that he got caught, because he would have been a fun player to get to watch through his whole career.
Yeah. My uncle once sold Billy Joe Hobart a car, actually.
Was that the one he gave for free that got us sanctioned?
I'm not sure.
Did your uncle get us sanctioned? Is that evil on him?
I'm not sure if it was that one, but my uncle did work at a car dealership up in Seattle at that point, and he told me once that he actually sold Billy Joe Hobart a car. So it may have been the car that got him in trouble. I don't know.
It was one of those things. We got marked out by the pack. We were dominating, and so they basically found they trumped up some charges on us that everybody was doing it throughout the whole Pac-12. Every school was doing these little minor infraction things, and they dropped the hammer on us so that they could knock us down a peg. And it worked. Our program still never really fully recovered, even up until this day, from those sanctions. I mean, it caused Don James to retire. But just brutal. Tony Rice or Major Harris. I think it was Tony Rice was the quarterback for Colorado.
So yeah, it was one of those Ken Dorsey types who just drives the bus. Okay.
I was looking at the team. It was just the whole rest of the Colorado team was stacked. They had, Fourier and Deion Figures and Tony Birdie, this lineman. They were all the way through, had NFL players across the board. So on top of Chad was on the team too. But I think we take him on that. Thank you, Randall, for the $2 donation. Finish us off strong. All right. Well, we will be on with some new stuff. We got some draft stuff coming, free agency stuff coming. We appreciate you watching. Please hit that like button if you do like what you're watching here. Go over and sub to Brendon's channel. Another great show here, Brendon, today. Thank you for coming up into the Hawks Nest and having me over on your channel. I love doing this, man. It's great diving into this stuff and just getting as deep into the weeds as we can on this stuff. And that's where we think we both geek out at our best there. So appreciate you, my guy. You guys have a good night, and please don't ever forget here, even in the dearth of the offseason, the dregs of the offseason, don't forget, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.